So we'll just continue down this main stack here. I'm going to go ahead and delete these nodes. And now that we've got our GameRes UV'd, let's continue on with the baking process. We're going to do this a little bit differently than we did previously. What we're going to do is effectively merge our GameRes and our high-res into one node, explode them both out together, split them apart as a GameRes and a high-res group, and then bake them together. So how are we going to do that? First thing we're going to need to do is hit tab and then type in group, and we'll drop in a group node here. We're going to take the result of this UV layout mesh. We're going to plug this into the left side of the group. And for this group name, let's go ahead and name this GameRes. And then like I said before, we want to merge our low-res file with our high-res file, so we're going to drop a merge node. And let's go way back up here and get our high-res geometry again. So what we can do is we can click on this output string and then middle mouse drag all the way down here and merge it in. Now like I mentioned before in the previous videos, you can do anything you want to this high-res. You can set the normal angle of any of the faces by just dropping in a normal node here. And you can set this cusp angle to whatever you want. You can also put in a game dev quick material like we went over before, and you can do rounded edges. So if you have any really sharp Boolean hard surface geometry, you can use this rounded edges functionality to go ahead and plug your high-res into this, set that angle, or set that radius, and then pass that result down. The way this geometry was created, I don't think I'm really going to need any of that functionality. I just wanted to bring it up just in case you did, and you can go back and watch those videos. To make this line a little bit easier to look at, what I can do is I can hold down Alt and then drag out, and that'll put in a little bend dot in there. I can do the same thing down here if I want to. And one more thing I should probably mention, if you did want to hand this file off to somebody and say, for example, I'm going to hit tab, I'm going to type in null. So you can always drop in these null nodes. So if I do tab and then group, and then Alt drag out a couple different groups here. Let's say you have an input file that's required. And if you ever, by the way, if you ever want to cut these things, hold down Y and you can just slice through all these. And then you can hook them up like so. But if you ever had to hand off a file to somebody and they needed to have a single input for multiple outputs, what you can do is you can just put a null node in there and say, put stuff here, and then they'll know that they can put their things right through here, and then it'll go to these nodes, and then these nodes can go down to more complex node graphs, etc. So that's just a nice bookkeeping thing you can do. But anyways, we have our high-res coming all the way down here, and we're merging it with our GameRes. Our GameRes has a group node that's called GameRes. So we've merged those together. We can go ahead and turn that on if we want to see both our high-res and our GameRes together. So now let's go ahead and drop in an exploded view. We'll use the game dev exploded view here. So I'm going to take our high-res and our low-res together, and we make this node visible. We're going to explode them out into space together. You can change any of these options you want. Let's go ahead and turn on x-axis. And if you want to move these in or out, we can just change the scale value. And instead of radial, let's do linear. And we'll set the scale to like 5. So now we've got them exploded into space and they're all together perfectly, but now what we need to do is split them back out into their high-res and GameRes components. So let's hit tab and type in split. Make that node visible. And then for the split parameters for the group here, we're going to go ahead and grab our GameRes group. So now in the split node, we now have our GameRes on the left side, our high-res on the right. And with that available to us, we can do like we did before, hit the tab key, and drop in the game dev simple baker. So again, GameRes, high-res. We went over these settings in detail in the previous videos. I'm going to go ahead and keep the defaults. I think they're fine. We do have our file saved. So it's just going to save to the file location, put it in a render folder, and then again give it the file name plus the channel name. The channel names are right here. And then in the material, it's going to plug the AO into the diffuse map. If you go to the advanced properties here, you can tell it whether or not to use the MIC-T tangent space. You want to flip your green channel in your normal map, bring in a cage mesh, change your border padding, play with your ray bias and ray distance settings, etc. I'm going to go back to the top here and hit render. So now we can go back into our viewport here. We can hit Shift W to turn off our wireframes, and you can see everything's nice and baked. We have all of these all laid out. If we want to see them all together again, we're just going to go back to where our GameRes is together. Actually, you know what? I forgot to do one thing, and that's actually okay, because in Houdini, all I got to do is put it in here, and it'll go ahead and cook right through. So I'm going to fix something really quick here. I'm going to say the game dev soften normals I'm going to put right in between here. And for this value, I'm going to put harden UV seam. So I'm going to have everything averaged, all the vertex normals averaged on my object, but I'm going to harden where the UV seams are. And then I go right back through here. And then I'm going to rebake. Alrighty, so back where what I was talking about earlier, if we're ready to see this thing, we can drop in a game dev quick material onto right before we merge them together and bake them. Merge them with a high res and then split them apart and bake them. So this is our game res back to normal. Let's go ahead and tint this down to a medium gray. I'm going to grab our base color texture here from our render folder. We'll just throw in the AO as well. And then our normal map. We'll go ahead and flip Y. And now we've got our entire object. Let's hit spacebar G to go ahead and center that object here. So we've got our entire object UV laid out, baked out. If we hit Shift W, you can see we've got our wireframes going from more dense to less dense based on that paint sop node. And we're ready to export this right into game. So to export, let's just drop in a FBX output node. Drag that right in here. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is down here in your simple baker, if you did choose on this export FBX, it'll go ahead and export that FBX with you. Of course, this is going to be the exploded FBX, so not really all that useful, but if you didn't explode anything, then you could turn that on. For this one in particular, we can do this FBX. You're just going to tell it where it's going to go. Right now, it's going to go to your root directory of where your file is saved and name it out FBX. If you want to change that file name here, you can do that, as well as point to a different directory if you'd like. And when you're all ready, just hit save to disk, and that'll go ahead and export this file as an FBX. Anyway, that was the process of game resing and baking the ship, and as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. It seems like there's a lot going on, but really it's a pretty linear workflow. Of course, we're just barely scratching the surface of what the power of Houdini can do. All these parameters we're setting, we can fine-tune those as we go to get just the perfect results. And the most powerful thing, like we demonstrated earlier, is the ability to arbitrarily drop new files in here through this, have it batch through all these specific parameters that we set up, and then game res and bake any file that we want. And of course, we can do much more than this, but again, this is just the beginning of how we're going to be utilizing and fine-tuning the Houdini game res workflow and pipelines. And the other cool thing about this is we can save this as a Houdini digital asset. We can bundle this up into a single node, and we can expose parameters to the end user. So instead of them having to go through this node structure, what they can do is just go up here to, for example, if we double click on this voxel mesh node, you're going to see this is what the voxel mesh node is made up out of. If we hit U to go back up one, and we have this voxel mesh node selected, these are the exposed parameters to the end user. You can do the exact same thing to this entire graph, as you can bundle this down into one manageable node, expose the relevant information to the end user up here in the parameter view, and you don't even have to be in Houdini for that. You could expose these parameters in, for instance, Max or Maya or Unreal Engine, doesn't really matter. So a lot of flexibility in here, a lot of power in here. I hope that was a fun walkthrough. I hope you guys learned a lot. And again, a shout out to Louise Krull over at Houdini for showing me all this cool stuff. And like I said before, as we fine-tune this process, keep your eyes peeled for more videos coming out in the future. And as more nodes is being written, as more functionality is being added to what currently exists within Houdini right now.